Welcome to the Potion Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC.
But let's kick it off. So first things first, I usually just I like to, because I'm a comic book nerd. A lot of people don't know that about me unless they watch my videos and they see my Marvel first editions framed in behind me.
Right.
So I always love like the issue number 1 origin story of Colin Parks.
Yeah. So kick it off. Okay, man.
So how'd you get in the game? What drew you to the game? That sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I can get really long-winded about this, but I'll keep it kind of short. I mean, basically, as long as I can remember, I've always enjoyed type. I could never really put my fingers on it. Like going to movies as a kid, I always enjoyed the title sequences and things like that. But again, like being so young and not having access to like a computer, Photoshop and that, it was like, it took me a long time to really put my finger on it. It was actually high school, excuse me, in a sort of like amateur graphics class I took that a guy came in and he was a graphic designer. It was like, I had been mucking around in Photoshop making these graphics, not really sure what to call it. And this guy gave me the term graphic design. He said he went to school up in Nanaimo, and it was like, geez, just things kind of fell in my lap in that regard. And so from there, I went. Oh,
can I ask what year this was?
Well, I graduated from high school in 2001.
So, like, really, when you think about it, like, I always try to remind all my listeners, like, just how young, like, internet is, like, all the crap you have on your, like, all the stuff you have on your phone now. Like, you can put Adobe on your freaking phone now and do, like, little graphic design things on your phone.
Yeah.
Before that, like, firstly, it was super rudimentary. And secondly,
there was a
difficult.
Program. Yeah. There was some really simple programs. I can't even remember their names now. They were better than Microsoft Paint, but it's
don't knock MS Paint. I do a lot of things in MS Paint still.
Oh yeah, man. And there's an artist that uses MS Paint to amazing degrees, man. So I don't knock it. I just mean like that's kind of the industry pariah to a certain degree. So, but yeah. So it was like the sort of later years in high school, sort of 2000, 2001, where it was kind of like, just like I was introduced to Photoshop and this term graphic design. And the moment I started looking into, what is it called? Vancouver Island University. It was Malacina University College at the time. And I just was really drawn to their program because it was very, very classic graphic design. Like at the time, a lot of people were boasting these like X-media programs that was kind of like this hodgepodge of graphic design and marketing and web design and all this, just a mishmash. And I wanted to get down to the purest stuff, And so, I took a 2-year program there, graduated in 2006, and I've been basically in the industry ever since. I was freelancing, like I had a hairdresser that had me do business cards and stuff for them when I was in high school. I did some posters for high school and stuff. But, I got my first serious gig in 2007, and it's really, I haven't looked back.
So you were saying you were a font nerd, which you and I have this experience, and it's something that for some reason, like I feel like people underestimate their branding, but also put so much weight into it as well at the same time. So I always wonder, like, when you look at fonts, like, is it emotional? Is it to try and raise a sort of emotion out of you when you're looking at these fonts?
Well, I come at it from a pretty conceptual point of view, actually. Like, I like to consider, the history of the typeface, like when it was designed or like what era it's based on, and is that appropriate for the project? And then I look at details in terms of like functionality, like does it have a good breadth of options, like multiple weights, multiple widths, like a true workhorse typeface. And then there's also the more display stuff, which is things that I've been getting into more and more recently. Like, when I got right out of college, I was such a kind of timid designer. I hated all the quirky fonts. I loved just the classics that I knew worked. And then kind of over the years, I've gotten more and more interested in the kind of like quirky details. And now it's like, yeah, I just love these kind of quirky display typefaces that are, you know, they have a basis in like sort of classic design, but they add kind of modern twists. And yeah, I think, as I say, so like to come back to your question, it's, yeah, I come at it from like a kind of more conceptual point of view, but I do, like, I'll tell you, I have very emotional responses to typefaces. Like, you know,
do you think it's a subconscious thing for the, like, 'cause again, like, it goes back to that people have this, like, oh, just use Helvetica or just use Arial or just use a regular sans serif sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty impressed with the fact that I'm banging out just regular fonts just for you.
Yeah.
I've started becoming a font nerd myself. Well, you've seen some of the crazy fonts I've pulled out. But do you think on a subconscious level, like, I always have this thing, especially in restaurant and bar menus and designs and stuff like that, like I always have a thing called subconscious organization. That regardless of how crazy a person's life is, when they walk into a restaurant, it should be so organized and straight. So like that's where my cutlery being a certain angle and my glassware being a certain angle. And I got trained in fine dining, but I think that it flows through to the menu too. Like you go sit at a fine dining restaurant and they're using just a regular fucking MS Word font.
Oh yeah, that drives me nuts.
And it automatically goes, you just spent like $2.50, $3 for a fork, but you're okay with just doing MS Word and just flowing through whatever, like Sergio or whatever.
Yeah, free typefaces and stuff like that. Yeah, especially when it's like, you know, as a customer, like, you know, I've actually driven a lot of friends nuts when we go out for lunches and dinners because I'm almost always ripping the menus apart because it's such a funny thing that, like, you know, these restaurants invest so much in, you say, cutlery and like all the, like the tables, the decorations and stuff. And then this kind of small item that to people, a lot of people, it's kind of just information to them. You know, it doesn't really matter. Just so long as people can read it, that's all that matters. But it's like, it's, you know, great graphic design has been compared to like a crystal chalice or a glass, you know, where it's like, it works best when you kind of almost don't see it, but it's like, it's nailing those little details so you don't see it, you know? And the finish of a menu to me it's just one of those details, you know, that just completes the experience.
And that comes in paper as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Every little detail, man, the devil's in the details, right? And so it's, you know, to me, it's so long, if you get all those details right, it's just a far superior experience.
Yeah, like I think we were friends long before we worked together the first time, and I like to tell the story because it always makes you twitch. We started working together when I did Little Jumbo, and we did some pretty hardcore, like very little finicky things that I feel like a lot of the fonts and certain branding elements are always subconscious for a lot of people. They don't necessarily consciously see them and feel them. But subconsciously they get it. And that's kind of what I mean by the crystal glass, right? Is the fact that the average viewer isn't going to be able to nitpick these little details and say, oh yeah, I like the little flared serifs on the menu section typeface because it just, you know, they're just reading the menu, right? But it's going in there subconsciously for sure, you know. So we worked together the first time, Little Jumbo. We did the right paper, the right little like flair attributes, the logo. And I remember, I love this story because I tell people literally all the time, you designed a Little Jumbo logo for me. You sent it through. In my head, I responded to you going, oh my God, that's perfect. And then the day we signed the lease, I went and got a tattoo. And the first time you realized that I was happy with the logo is when you saw the logo tattooed on my arm on Facebook.
Yeah. And it was like, well, I guess that's the final logo then.
I was working some long days, and I was sure I emailed you back going, this is perfect, because we went through a few iterations, but you sent me through the current iteration with the right font and everything, and I was like, holy shit, this is perfect. I thought I got back to you. I obviously didn't. And now I'm too excited. And then I have the tattoo on my arm of the logo that you designed me for the very first time.
Yeah. And that's my second tattoo design, technically.
Really?
I did one for my girlfriend in high school, but it's not worth looking at this point. She's tattooed over it as well.
So this is the thing that we both deal with when we're pitching ideas. And full disclosure for everybody listening, Colin and I work together. We partnered up and own Human Construct design, branding and design together. And we've done a few projects that have been super easy, a few projects that have been a little bit more difficult. I wish they were always super easy, because I feel like we both get the industry. But I feel like people put so much, they overthink their branding, but then also underthink and underutilize their branding in a big way. Like, everybody's like, oh, it's going to be this tweet and this twitch and this twitch. Like, I look at it and it's like, I always wonder, like, if you look at the Nike logo, like Nike logo, I think it sold back in the 70s for like $20. Oh, like a graphic designer kid. Like, that's a very famous, like, graphic designer kid did something in school and someone, like, that, that logo itself, it doesn't really tie in with a shoe brand in any way, shape, or form. Like, by itself, it is worth nothing.
Oh,
but then you put it,
but then you put it on anything.
Yeah, but then you put it on Nike, and it's worth billions of dollars.
Yeah, so, well, they marketed the shit out of that thing. So they went wholehearted behind it, right? They just invested in that as the mark, and it's kind of like Santa Claus being in red and white. That's a result of Coca-Cola.
Yes, exactly. So it's these little things that, like, people, like, I think take for granted because they overthink it. Like, I think the best example of, like, how brand is attached to a logo is attached to a brand is McDonald's.
Right, yeah.
McDonald's, the name McDonald's is an Irish pub. It's not an American fast food joint.
Yeah.
Like, it's only McDonald's because it's attached to the Golden Arches and McDonald's as a brand as a fast food joint. But and I
just recently discovered that only second to Santa Claus, Ronald McDonald is, like, the most recognized character by kids in North America. That's
the thing. Like it's a clown attached to an American fast food joint.
Yeah,
like it shouldn't gel, but, like, this level of commitment to a brand has made the Nike Swoosh a symbol for, like, if you see a Nike Swoosh by itself, it's a sports brand and it stands for what it stands for.
Yeah, and Apple's another great example.
Apple's a fantastic. It's a computer brand, but it's an Apple.
Yeah, and like, also, I think what's great to mention about all three of these marks is the absolute simplicity of them. The fact that they can be on anything in any shape or form, and you recognize it instantly.
Which brings it's actually a perfect segue into, we were talking about before we started recording, is that my big thing, which I think I learned from you with Little Jumbo, because Little Jumbo, we really delved into coasters and matchbooks and this sort of following through of, like, the base mark all the way through to every single medium, which I think originally I believe you had sent something kind of more like a sort of etching, like an image of an old school etched elephant, and I immediately I love that stuff, but it's just so decorative, It's very hard to transfer it to things like, if you want to get a hat embroidered or something like that. Well, even if you put it to a matchbook, it would have got really washed out and really muddy really quickly. Yeah, the details get lost at a small size for sure. And that's where, like, I've seen some brands that go with that kind of classic engraving route. They do multiple iterations for sizes, And so, like, sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, and that's, like, those are fantastic projects, but that's just, like, such an incredible amount of work. And I like to, again, coming back to the conceptual thinking, I always like to try to boil everything down to, like, its kind of purest essence, Oh, and then, again, like, when you change up for different sizes and stuff, you've almost got to educate the consumer that this is our brand, but slightly different to go onto this. And this is our brand, slightly different to go onto this. It doesn't flow through in a nice linear line. It's sort of up and down, like this education point, like, oh, we've got this on our branding, but then it doesn't fit onto a hat. Like you said, a hat's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So do you think, we both talked about it, we've had long conversations now, and I sort of try and get ahead of learning everything that you can talk about. Same thing with Christoph and Exemplar, like he talks about like pay-per-clicks and stuff like that. So I've been deep diving into that sort of stuff. Right. Do you think that that's where a lot of branding for the hospitality industry sort of falls down? Is that, oh, I love this one logo this way for a big banner outside my place, but then when I try and transfer that to merchandise and business cards and stuff like that, it sort of loses out.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where, I think it's, like I've modeled myself after, some kind of the great designers of the mid 20th century. Because, a lot of, quote unquote designers, graphic designers, they call themselves that, but really they've just picked up Photoshop and, they're charging $15 an hour or whatever, no, or even just $15 for a logo flat, no training. And they're bumping out these super glossy, super detailed, intricate, highly affected logos that, they just, what happens when you've got like a one color print job or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like it falls apart almost immediately.
So like I kind of look at some classic, like let's break it down to some classic food and beverage sort of bottles. Like Veuve Clicquot is a perfect example. Like that gold, that certain yellow, that's Veuve. But then they also have this beautiful emblem as well as that type font. And all three of those elements, the yellow, the type font and the logo, are all mix and match on all of their peripheral and their collateral stuff.
Yeah, and that's really what great branding is, being given kind of a package where you've got, as you say, you've got kind of a brand color spectrum, you've got typefaces that are going to be used, and you've got your icon, whether that's an icon or a word mark, monogram, whatever that be. It's that complete package where you can use just the icon or just the word mark, or even just sometimes people seeing that recognizable typeface is enough, right, in the right colors. And so it's that then, as you say, it gives you complete flexibility, and you've got ease of recognition too, because you don't have to muck around, with a variety of logos or whatever.
And you're a bit of a color nerd too, aren't you?
I'm strangely enough, color is the most difficult thing that I find in terms of picking, because I'm so indifferent to colors. I just love the black and white aesthetic, hence why Human Construct is in black and white, because you gave me control over that, and it was just like, okay, here we go, black and white it is. And then, because it also just works so great, because anytime you introduce a pop of color, like our project thumbnails, they just stand out so nicely against that black and white. But I kind of like all colors. And so, when it comes to picking colors for a brand, I just try to think what would feel most appropriate. And, again, conceptually kind of what ties back to what the brand does, or, what sort of energy they have.
The Coalition Craft business cards, people comment on those.
Oh, yeah.
They are bright. The Coalition Craft business cards are fucking bright, especially when we do like black and white for our uniforms and stuff.
Right.
The business cards stand out hard. But
I hope they're good comments.
They're amazing comments. But I want to kind of bring value to the listeners right now. Let's take it right back. And I want to kind of give an insight to, not really about Human Construct, let's scrap the sort of plugging sort of shit, but more so like, if you're a brand new restaurant, a brand new bar, a brand new distillery, brewery, like we deal with this a lot, how do you tackle, like I know how I tackle it, and I might jump in while you're talking, but let's give some value to the people listening who may be opening a new distillery or brewery, and again, going to that like, oh, my friend knows Photoshop, or I've got a guy in town who can make me a logo. We've had some feedback, like a whole branding package of $500, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What are the things people should be looking for and sort of chasing when it comes to setting out to do this sort of like big branding job, bottles and labels and logos for the front door and stuff like that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so do you want me to just kind of walk through my basic process?
I want you to walk through your basic process, because even if people don't use us, which is fine, at least they know what to look for, the pros and cons of it all.
Okay, great.
So that they don't get this fantastic, flashy, glossy, fucking paged bullshit on bullshit graphic design, and then they try and do shirts down the line and it doesn't transfer very well, and
then they need to get a new logo done or something.
Exactly. Like when we get a new project, how's your brain work?
Right. Okay. Well, immediately it's research. I think that is one of the most important markers of what I think a great designer should be, is doing the research, because there's the sort of classic idiom. It's like, the solution is usually in the problem, right? And so the more you know about the problem, the easier it kind of is to find that solution. And when you've done research and all that, it's what you produce is that much more relevant to what the company does, rather than just shellacking some glossy shit on a turd, or whatever you want to call it. It's relevant to the business, and it's solving, very legitimate problems in a very smart, intelligent, and, sort of long-term way. And so, as I say, it's research. I like to, kind of get as much information from the potential client, like, why they get into the industry, what are they doing right now, where do they want to go? And then, it's always nice to see some like kind of visual reference in terms of what the clients like and dislike, so kind of building mood boards, that sort of thing. And then I kind of just digest all that, for a time, and then just kind of start sketching, just building ideas until something just really clicks with me. I'm kind of, perhaps a little different than a lot of other designers in that I tend to just kind of commit to one concept and present that, because I feel like it's, as much as I love showing a variety, there's always one that I feel is the most appropriate, the best product, right? And so I like to put that forward without any other sort of noise, so to speak. And, then just kind of go from there, see how the client feels, and just work from that.
So we talked about this a couple of times, and I think we talked about it off camera. Is like the transfer to mediums is the big one. We talked about it just briefly before, but like when you're starting to like go through, especially for like not so much for a restaurant, I think for breweries, distilleries, and like wineries, swag and merchandise is quite a big proportion of the peripherals that they have going forward. How far ahead do you sort of think about going, okay, well, this is what's going to look like on show? Because, like, take Solvent, for instance. Like, I love Solvent's package because you're like, oh, we're going to be in a Amaro bar? Awesome. Let's do some soccer jerseys, which was like completely left field. Let's do some Amaro soccer jerseys.
Yeah. Well, and that's, like, again, coming back to that idea of having, a really strong mark, a good solid foundation for typeface selection, and then your color scheme, you can kind of do just about anything, apply to anything, and you can just have as much or as little fun as you want, depending on the, what's appropriate for the brand.
So I kind of look at it as like a triangle. Like the very top. I love triangles for some reason. Yeah. I really love triangles to put across my point. Like at the very top of the pyramid is that mark. And then the typeface underneath, the colors underneath that, and then really that just fits out to everything else. It just flows completely out to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could kind of endlessly add bricks to the bottom of that pyramid, as you just build off those kind of top three. And I think it's, for me, I try to just assure that it's going to be it's going to be as flexible as possible. The mark is going to be, whether t-shirts are appropriate or not, it's always good to keep that in mind. Because again, these like super photorealistic things, printing's gotten so much better, but still, you're almost always going to run into a situation where you can't do a full color photographic logo. And so, a lot of stuff almost immediately, kind of, it falls apart the moment it's translated to black and white. Like I've seen that a lot as a book designer, people providing, these like, infographics of like two overlapping colors, like a Venn diagram, where it's like one side's blue and one side's red. You convert it to gray and they both look the same gray,
Yeah.
And so you've immediately lost the impact of the original. So yeah, it's always to me like, and again, going back to like the kind of the mid 20th century designers where they didn't have photographic options, like we do today, like cheap digital printing. I make sure things are going to work in the most simplest form possible, kind of lowest common denominator.
Well, I think a lot of people, like, they get caught up in, like, I'm actually looking at an Art Deco sort of absinthe ad, like that what year was, it's actually 1896. It was printed.
Yeah.
That 1896 super, like, colorful layer upon layer, like, absinthe design.
Yeah, kind of like, is it kind of Art Nouveau-y looking? Or?
Very Art Nouveau.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, oh, well, that was easy because I can get a print now. But then you're like, but back in those days, to print that was obscenely expensive.
Oh, yeah. And, well, that's why you see it, like, they're still, like, as colorful as they are, they're still flat. They're plans in flat color, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. I'm actually looking right now, like, there's not too much dimension to each color. But even then, like, a lot of them were painted, then printed. But they weren't printed in mass volume like they are now. They were, like, printed very specifically, obscenely expensive, and then given to bars that sell a whole bunch of that product, like as an advertising tool. It wasn't like printed for your everyday home. Like people in their homes didn't have these things.
No, and that's why, like, you'll see a lot of those old school spirit ads are now like, giant wall art and posters and things like that, because they were so well crafted for the time because they had to be.
Do you think, what do you think are the biggest pitfalls for most restaurants and bars and distilleries and sort of, let's keep in the hospitality industry, what are the biggest pitfalls that a lot of these new startups sort of make when it comes to their branding and their design?
Well, I think it's just a fear of investment, because as a very serious and professional designer, I charge for my time accordingly. And, that I can totally appreciate that scares a lot of people off immediately because, they've just spent so much, on all the various aspects of opening their establishment. And now it's kind of like, I just want to get this thing running, and to me, that's just a terrible mistake because as we kind of mentioned before, there's a lot of people that rush to get logos done and, months or a year later, they're having to get it redone because they either are tired of it or it doesn't function the way that they need it to.
It's not resonating on any platform. Like, I think some people, especially in this modern age, don't see their logos and their branding flowing through to a website, flowing through to their social media, flowing through to every point of difference that people are gonna take. I think the hardest thing with a lot of people with money is they pay some money out and they get a still. That's a tangible result. Yeah. Whereas with branding and logo design, it's a tangible result, but the intangibility of the process of that tangible result isn't fully understood.
Yeah, it definitely, it takes a bit of a leap of confidence because, like, and I suffer with that, sometimes myself, where it's like, when I'm putting forward a logo, it's like, is this actually, the best concept? But, again, it's like you referenced with Nike or Apple or McDonald's or the other big brands, like IBM or whatever. It's like, although IBM has been through a lot of iterations with their logo. But,
huge amount of iterations.
Yeah. So they're a bad example, but it's just that, like, it's that confidence, and again, that simplicity of those logos. It makes them just so timeless, right? You don't need to worry about rebranding, and so that initial investment, while it might make you bite your nails a bit, it's so worth it in the long run. It's kind of like buying a $500 clunker car versus getting something that is gonna last you for some years.
Yeah, well, I think that's on the flip side of that is that people. Doubling down and understanding their story personally on a business and a personal level is where they sort of fall down. So they get this beautiful logo and they're like, this is awesome. This represents me, but how do I perpetuate how it represents me in the next 3 to 6 months? And right, so like you said, you have nervousness pitching a new logo, and then the person who's buying the logo has this sort of nervousness about how do I transfer this to a story? And I think a lot of, especially the ones we talk about in BC here, I think a lot of distilleries and breweries and wineries and restaurants and bars, their understanding of their why, while you and I, we chat about their why, what they want to achieve and stuff like that in depth, they don't fully understand their why.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's like we've had, you and I have had personal experience with one project where I feel like that was a major issue, was just, getting down to that core information of, like what is the brand about, and where do you want to take it? Because it's great to get something for the moment, but again, you've really got to think about the longevity with branding.
Oh, what's your why now? What's your why in a year? What's your why in 2 years? What's your why in 5 years?
Yeah, exactly.
I've given up projects. I'm very open about this. I've given up projects that the person didn't have a good why. I gave up 2 projects this year to develop spirits because their why wasn't a very good answer. I said, why do you want to do this? And they said, money.
Yeah. Well, and if it's like, there's also the important separation between why personally and why does the business exist, right? Because that's another thing that can really impact great branding is getting too subjective about things, right? And so it's, I don't like red because I had an accident. I ran into a red Corvette years ago, and now I hate the color red. It's like, well, what is red appropriate for the brand? You kind of got to ensure that you're not, as a business owner, you're not taking things too personally. You've got to be able to separate the owner and the business, I mean, unless they are one and the same, like Blue shoes or something like that.
But again, at the end of the day, it's a great point, is that subjectiveness. I think people really, like, subjectiveness is not your point of view. I deal with this with social media marketing, with all this sort of stuff. Like, people will tell me that Facebook marketing doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, but we just had a conversation the other day that you think that the Facebook algorithm changed the balance of power for the U.S. election in 2016. I'm like, how do you think that Facebook has that much power, but then you don't believe it has the power for you for Facebook marketing? That doesn't make sense. And I talk about a lot of this with a bunch of people who have hit me up to do podcasts during COVID, because everybody's fucking got a podcast now, which is...
I've got one coming next week.
But like, subjectiveness is in the eye of the beholder, and so quality is subjective. And so again, it goes back to like, I don't like red. Well, that's nice, but red is very, very bright and eye-catching on the shelf. And doing a red heavy logo will definitely get you standing out on a freaking retail shelf in a liquor store. And so there's this sort of like personal subjectiveness that I've had a lot of, which is understandable. Our industry is very passion over business. Like, it's it's super passion driven, and the business is a secondary thing. Like, if I break even or make a little bit of money, I'm happy. Sort of mentality when it comes to the business of hospitality. So I always find it's very interesting when people really start getting like super subjective. I'm like, but what do your customers think? What are the people who are going to a liquor store? What do people think? Like, if you put this bottle on the back bar of a bar, is it going to stand out from the fucking 1,500 gins that bar could possibly have.
Yeah.
So how does it stand out? Like the green bottle for Tanqueray is iconic because it's the green Tanqueray bottle. The blue bottle for Bombay. And these are just bottle colors. I'm not even thinking about branding.
Yeah.
Bottle colors.
Well, that's an important part of branding, right? Again, coming back to the whole color scheme, right? Like it's again kind of, you know, just building that indelibility of the association.
So let's tie this off. So because we've both got a ton to do today, and including projects of our own. What is the last one piece of advice you would give to someone who is thinking about opening a restaurant, a bar, a distillery, a brewery, a winery, or thinking about rebranding because they feel like their branding isn't working for them in the mass market, especially for BC craft spirits? Like if you have a gin, how does your gin stand out from the 95 gins that are available on the shelf from BC craft distilleries?
Right.
What's the one, if you can distill it, I'm using that as a tongue-in-cheek phrase, but if you can distill it into one point, what's the one point you would give to someone who's sort of on the fence about taking the next step with branding?
Well, I mean, I think it's a very, as you've said, a very subconsciously valuable thing. And, you know, don't be afraid to make your own mark because, you know, follow the leader, that sort of approach, which I've been involved with before in projects. It just, you know, it doesn't work long term. And so, you know, I think just, you know, making sure that you're approaching everything with, you know, intelligence or, you know, having enough information, again, you know, touching on, you know, the why, you know, and then just ensuring that, you know, whomever you're hiring or whatever, they're taking all that information seriously and not just saying like, oh yeah, you know, that sounds great. How about this mark right here, you know, that they've just pulled out of their pocket that, you know, has no association to anything, right? So again, coming back to research. So I don't know that was very easy as one point.
I think that's perfect. It's one of the things like it's the same sort of thing I do with when I'm running bars and opening new bars. Like you sort of got to have this mind's eye for everything that's going on in the sphere and the macro of the culture that's existing, but also put blinders on and stick to your guns and sort of like while this is all going on, like again, like what you said in the very beginning is like, well, to follow the leader. Like, oh, I like that guy's branding. That's nice. That's that guy's branding. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like if it's a restaurant or a menu style that's a little bit different to going, I like such and such's bottle design and branding. I want that. You're like, but so you're going to compete directly with them? Like your product's going to be as good, if not better. Like, so take in everything that's in the macro, but then blinders on for the micro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that encapsulate the best with it? Like, does that encapsulate the way you want it to be encapsulated?
I think so. Yeah, no, that sounds right. No, because I mean, yeah, you absolutely definitely need to keep an eye on competition and everything like that. And, you know, there are times where it is perhaps appropriate to kind of fit in. But again, you know, like a lot of people, when they're following the leader, they look to giants, you know, and it's like you're competing with a giant that has, you know, millions of dollars invested in marketing. And, you know, you're a little sort of mom and pop shop, you know, no offense, of course, like I love mom and pop shops, but I think you're ultimately far better, you know, kind of finding your own niche and sticking to that. Like, you know, to reference my own story, tying it back to the beginning, my origin story, it's like, you know, I tried freelancing before and I stepped into it just thinking it was going to be easy peasy, you know, just some easy money and stuff like that because I loved the work. And I figured, you know, I did good work and the clients would come to me, but no, you know, it took some time to build the necessary foundation. And now it's like, you know, you've kind of, it seems, knock on wood, that I've kind of hit the snowball point. So yeah, it's like, again, just, you know, feeling confident in what you're doing and sticking to your guns and making sure that everything feels right to the core values of the brand.
And that is a perfect finish to the podcast. Thanks so much for your time, man. I know we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks and we've just been inundated with work. So it was good to sort of get your perspective and hopefully it brings value to the listeners. in a way that they understand how branding works. But I'm sure I'm going to probably talk to you in the next couple of hours about something else. So I want to thank you for your time, man. Cheers, buddy.
Of course. Yeah, thank you, man.
Cheers, you. Bye.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.